So in this video, we'll be looking at one of my absolute favourite cloths. I'll be doing a deep dive into classic flannel. So when you talk about flannel in terms of fashion, it can mean different things to different people. Ask me or ask somebody in the sort of the classic menswear world and they think of beautiful drapey fabrics. Others may think of it as a shirting and a plaid shirt synonymous with 90s grunge. I see it as more luxurious. I see it as soft and drapey and beautiful colours. But others see it as almost like a basic cloth, as a standard grey flannel suit, as a commodity. The truth is probably somewhere in between. In this video, I'll be going into the history of flannel and why it's such a great cloth and how it can be incorporated into your wardrobe. The word flannel is actually synonymous with wool. It comes from a Welsh word for wool. I will not attempt to pronounce this word. I know it starts with a G. Originally it meant any soft wool. It now refers to a particular type of cloth. So the main two types of flannel are either worsted or woolen. Now worsted is what most suiting fabrics are made from sort of serges, bird's eyes, all the way up to the Super 200s. Woolen is less seen. You'll see it in fabrics such as tweed, and it is a thicker yarn, a little bit chunkier, and it's what you associate with the more fuzzy cloths. Both the samples I have here, which are from my own personal suit collection, and two of my absolute favourite cloths for autumn winter, are actual woolen flannel cloths. That's not to say the worsted doesn't have its place. So flannel is a great cloth for autumn and winter, but interestingly, or not so interestingly, depending on how much of a cloth nerd you are, flannel was originally devised and created as a summer cloth, which seems quite bizarre today when we're so obsessed with lightweight fabrics. But if you think back to traditional sports such as cricket and tennis, and the gentlemen would have been wearing long white, off-white trousers, that would have been flannels. Cricket flannels is a known expression, and that's where we'd have worn it. So we were worn in summer sports, you wore flannel. And then the light grey flannel suit was often seen in traditional menswear brochures from sort of the pre-war era, certainly in spring collections, where flannel would have been seen as a lighter weight, easier fabric compared to old, heavy, traditional worsted serges, which have been winter cloths. When I look back at fashion books and writings from the 20s and 30s, you do read about flannel as being the go-to sports trousering. At the time, we were seeing a big movement in dressing down between sort of the two wars and the growth of less formal dressing. We were seeing the morning coat replace the frock coat. We're seeing the rise of black tie. So it was a time of casualisation. It's quite interesting when we look back at the elegance of the 1930s and see it as the epitome of elegance. At the time, it was seen as a big area of dressing down. When I've read some of the writings and the autobiography of the Duke of Windsor, he was a big fan of American dressing because it was less starchy and formal than the British. So it's interesting how nowadays we're going through a similar thing, perhaps not as elegant, only time will tell. And interestingly, I would say that the rise in popularity of flannel as a tailoring cloth, either as a suiting or as a trouser material, also makes a great blazer, really rises with the rise of the lounge suit. And lots of the classic materials we associate with tailoring look fantastic in flannel. And I guess what I haven't really touched on is that what brings flannel together is really that surface interest. It has that lovely, soft, fuzzy feel to it. It's very tactile. From a stylist point of view, it looks fantastic on camera. I'm sure these suits look amazing because it reflects light in such a sympathetic way. If you compare that to flat cloths like serges and mohairs that can tend to be quite flat and either quite shiny or more light absorbent, so they don't have that same richness to them. I guess the only other fabric which you can compete with that would be things like tweed that has such a lovely tactile feel to it. Also, one of the things I love about flannel is really the melange of colours in it. You can get piece dye flannels which have their place, but even if you look at these grey suits to the left of me, It just has, when you look closely to it, so many different colours in it. And the better mills will use that to their advantage and weave interesting shades together. The more colour you can put to create one colour, the more interesting to the eye it is. And because of this lovely surface, certain fabrics to me just look better in flannel. So to me, a solid grey suit can be conservative, perfect for a funeral, but when you put it in flannel, suddenly it takes on a different life. It has a certain more playful, elegant, luxurious feel to it. A chalk striped suit for me absolutely has to be in flannel, because the only way you get that genuine tailor's chalk feel to it is in that fuzzy flannel cloth. And another fabric which I also like in worsteds and mohairs, but again has a lovely feel in flannel, is a Glen check or a Prince of Wales. It just looks far more interesting, again with all those different depth of colours and shadows it creates. It just has a real visual interest to it. It has a sophistication to it. So why aren't flannel suits more popular? Why don't we see them in the high street? I guess it does have some disadvantages. It is a higher maintenance fabric. If you're wearing a flannel suit, they don't hold their shape as well as a worsted. The trousers, for example, the crease in them doesn't hold as clean, as sharp as a worsted or a mohair, so it needs to be pressed a lot more between wears. One of the tips I also give my customers, or when I was a buyer I'd insist upon, is perhaps consider 2 pairs of trousers. You will find that because of the softer nature of it and the fuzzier nature, the trousers in particular do tend to wear out before the jacket. So if you're buying a flannel suit or you're ordering a suit from a tailor, 2 things. Do I need to get a second pair of trousers so I can rotate them? Or does this jacket work well as a sports jacket? This suit I have 2 pairs of trousers with because I wear it regularly in the winter and I don't want to be left with a grey flannel jacket. This suit, I actually only have 1 pair of trousers with it, because I actually do sometimes wear this Prince of Wales check jacket as a sports jacket. So I hope you can take something from that, because you don't want to be left with a beautiful lambswool flannel jacket that you can't wear as a sports jacket. You don't want to be left with a very strong, heavy, dark navy chalk stripe double breasted that looks a bit odder with jeans. So bear that in mind. So if I'm working with a customer who's actually building a wardrobe from scratch, these wouldn't be in your top 3-4 suits. I would suggest your first suit should be worsteds, mid-weight, something you can wear all year round, which is going to be comfortable in summer as in winter. I would also suggest perhaps something which is going to be harder wearing. Once you've then got the basics covered, I would then go into a flannel suit. It could be your first luxurious suit, your first really good suit perhaps, once you've brought your basics up and you can afford to rotate your clothing. And where do you go? One thing I wouldn't go for is a plain navy flannel. I'm not a fan of navy flannel as a plain cloth. Whereas grey comes alive in flannel, for me, navy doesn't do the same job. You don't get the same melange of colours, unless it's more of an Air Force blue, which is beautiful. But dark navy flannel, plain, I don't like it. You don't get the sharpness which I think a navy suit requires, so I'd be more likely to go for worsted. It's also really awful for lint. I find you're constantly need to brush it because it seems to attract any bit of fluff, any bit of dust. So it's a high maintenance cloth with very little reward. I would always suggest, if you're looking for your first flannel suit, you want a plain grey. After that, if you're looking for something a little bit special and you don't need a plain grey suit, a classic sort of 1930s chalk stripe, or consider a Glen check. Where flannel is really good is it's a great vehicle for colour. Find the better mills, and by better mills, the fabrics I like are obviously classic fox flannel, which I'll come to in a bit. Vitali Barberis do wonderful flannels, but other mills to look out for would be people like Skabal, Stand Even, Laura Piana, all do their versions of great flannel. It's a great colour vehicle because, again, it's melange and it has texture to it. If you're looking for a pair of interesting trousers, perhaps go with a sports jacket and you've got all your greys covered, you do find colours like pale stones, oatmeal, sky blues, even sometimes in sort of the reds and burgundies, for me look far more interesting a flannel cloth than they do perhaps in a flat worsted. They can look a little bit too sharp. So it's a wonderful, wonderful colour vehicle. When I was a menswear buyer and I was travelling to the cloth shows, I always liked new season's colours in flannel because it was just so interesting. I'd also suggest if you're in the market for a flannel suit, it looks better in more sort of 1930s drapier cuts. I like it with wider lapels, broader shoulders, a little bit of drape in the chest, and a slightly wider leg trouser. Because it has such lovely drape and it holds its shape in a slightly different way, it's not sharp, it hangs. A fuller cut is more forgiving than a slim fit. Now I like slim fit suits. I know fashion changes and we always hate what was in fashion last. And I always hated the skinny suit, but I do like a slightly shorter jacket. I do like a slim lapel. I don't wear it very often, but I still appreciate it. For me, that's a suit that looks amazing in a sharp cloth, like a fresco or a mohair. But for flannel, you want something a little bit easier, a bit more drapey, really lean into that slightly 1930s aesthetic. Another styling tip I would say to my customers who are looking to buy flannel suits is, because they tend to have quite warm shades, is I always prefer to put dark brown buttons on them rather than navies or grey buttons. The brown button just looks richer and just complements that lovely shade they have. Now in British cloth manufacturing, there are different schools of tailoring. Most cloth now is made in the north of England and around the Huddersfield and Leeds area, but there used to be also a cloth industry in the west of England, and west of England cloths and Huddersfield cloths were different. Generally the worsted cloths would come from the north of England, and the flannels would come from west of England, and the woolen fabrics. So the fabrics you'd expect from the west of England would be things like coatings such as covert cloth and the classic flannel. Now what Fox Brothers are famous for as well is a particular shade of grey flannel, which is, to a connoisseur, you can recognise it from a distance. It has a beautiful warm shade to it. It's sepia toned. Now I know certain American designers fetishise it and it's just got a lovely feel to it, but it's very warm and rich. And it's only when you compare it to another grey flannel that suddenly looks very cold and grey. What they do is they just have this perfect off-white creamy mixing with greys, and it's just so rich. It's just such a luxurious, easy feel to it. I absolutely love it. Now again, where this colour comes from, I don't know, because I'm talking to some of my friends in the cloth industry, is that were the cloths always made like that, or is it just how the yarns faded over time? If you look at an old swatch book from the early 20th century and you're looking at fabrics, over time the white cloths would have turned off-white. So were these cloths like this originally in the 30s, or whether it's just how it's aged and we're just replicating something that never existed? I don't know, and ultimately I don't really care, because I think this is absolutely beautiful. This flannel is from, I've mentioned before, it's from a fantastic Italian mill called Vitale Barberis Canonico, or VBC as it's known in the trade. Is also an absolute favourite of mine. It's widely available, so a lot of my customers who don't shop in Savile Row and perhaps going to made-to-measure tailors provincially have access to this type of fabric. It's quite well priced, so if you're nervous about trying flannel for the first time, this is a very good entry level to it. But again, a proper flannel as well, rather than high street. Be aware of high street flannels. They can be. I've seen cloths off the peg described as flannel, and they're not flannel. They should feel rich to the hand. If it doesn't feel rich, just avoid it. And it's also available in such a great range of designs, and the colours they have are amazing. This is a suit I absolutely love wearing. It's got a lot of character to it. But what Vitale Barberis also do is they do an amazing range of flat colours. I think they call it they're piece dyed, so they're a flat colour, which isn't your typical flannel, but it's so useful for other garments. You've probably seen me wearing other videos a plain double-breasted waistcoat. I often pick flannel for it because it holds its colours really well. So don't see flannel just as a suiting, even if it is a suiting bunch. They do make great separates. In fact, going back to VBC, I remember, I say it wasn't that long ago, it was probably over 10 years ago, is when I saw their new collection, which is always a highlight of the year, of their new flannel collection, is they were introducing a lot more jacketing cloths, which I thought was great because I'd always seen flannel as a suiting, but actually it makes a wonderful, wonderful jacket. It can make a great blue blazer, if you want something a bit more interesting. It can work great unstructured. I always say the mistake people make when they go for unstructured tailoring is to go for something too light. It becomes a bit limp. If you go for a cloth with a bit of structure in it, suddenly a soft shoulder and a cleaner chest works better because you get the structure from the fabric. So for an unstructured, easy blazer you can wear, you know, also winter, definitely pick a flannel. But also, you can look at things like chalk stripe. In a worsted striped suit as a jacket doesn't really work. But actually flannel chalk stripe can work really well as separate. I love a flannel chalk stripe as a smart casual trouser with knitwear. I also like, if you're a sophisticated dresser, a flannel chalk stripe jacket as a odd jacket can also work really smart. I find it works better in less somber colours, so I would probably avoid charcoals and navies, but a dove grey chalk stripe or maybe a brown chalk stripe, and that's another colour, is it browns and beiges, look wonderful in a flannel. They have that real lovely 1930s feel to them. It's also worth considering the flannel cloths if you're in the market for a super luxury suit. Now I know the super 150s and the 170s have their fans and some people are quite anti them. At the moment, there's probably a bit of a trend against them with the menswear crowd, and again more robust cloths like the traditional flannels and the frescoes. But I still like them. I think the high supers done beautifully have their place. So if you're looking for a suit, perhaps for presentation, something that's going to feel wonderful, something you're going to wear not very often, but you don't want that typical shine associated with the super 150s plus, which I don't mind. A flannel can be wonderful. You often see cashmere blends as well. When I first started working with Laura Piana in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, one of the books which I was absolutely in love with was a flannel book with 10%, 15% cashmere. Beautiful. I think if you put a bit of cashmere into a flannel suit, again, it just ups the luxury value to it and it just feels wonderful. I know both Fox and VBC also put some cashmere blends in, and that's something not to shy away from if you're looking for a real luxury suit. For a lot of people, flannel is a shirting cloth, particularly in sort of plaid. A flannel shirt is where they brush the fibre to give it that sort of warm, fuzzy effect. You don't really use it for tailoring. I think I experimented once or twice making trousers, but it didn't really make as well as I was hoping to. But it's a great shirting. Most people see it as a sort of sports shirt, like a plaid shirt, something great for an overshirt. But actually, I remember a mill called Can Cleany a few years ago introduces quite refined flannels, and they were beautiful. Again, it's a great colour vehicle. You can use colours in flannel shirting that look a little bit odd in flat poplins, and it looks very elegant with a tie and a flannel suit. So I'll come to styling a bit later, but if you've got that lovely soft fuzzy suit, I like a contrast with a crisp shirt, who doesn't? But sometimes a flannel shirt and a cashmere tie can look equally interesting when you keep textures soft. Bring in some suede shoes, fantastic. But anyway, flannel shirting has a softer nap, obviously great for overshirts, great for casual garments, not so much used for tailoring. And as I've said before, flannel is your definitive odd trouser material. If you only have one piece of flannel in your wardrobe, make sure it's a pair of grey flannel trousers. They go with everything. I often use a quote from the Alan Flusser book, I don't remember which one, where he was talking about picking your sports jackets, and he made a great comment that if your new jacket doesn't go with grey flannels, don't buy the jacket. And I think that's a great rule of thumb and something I still use to this day. Obviously, the classic combination of grey flannels and navy blazer, some people refer to as English uniform, which I quite like, is great. But grey flannels work with tweed, works with any sports jacket. It's also great with any piece of knitwear. An easy upgrade for your wardrobe if you want to dress a bit smarter, perhaps at the weekend, and you're sort of bored of wearing jeans and chinos. A pair of just beautiful pair of grey flannels is a wonderful thing. You don't tend to use flannel for an overcoat material because it's not robust enough. You tend to use heavier cloths or proper overcoating. But if you're looking for something like a lighter weight top coat, when I say top coat, that's something you wear instead of a suit or a blazer rather than over the top of, and something for spring or autumn, a heavier weight flannel can work beautifully. So if you're thinking sort of like a take on a pea coat or something a little bit more, quite a modern look, something the Italians do very well, these sort of hybrids between greatcoats and pea coats, which look fantastic over a sweater, flannel can be a good option to use and something I've used in the past. As a stylist, I just love working with flannel. As I've said before, even just the most simple mid-grey suit just takes on far more life when it's executed in flannel. You can either contrast it or you can blend with it. So for shoes, I know since our shoe video, people are really far more interested and far more experimental with their shoes. You can go for two ways. You either go with a nice contrast and with your grey flannel suit, a really heavily polished black Oxford or Chelsea boot, so you get the contrast between the matte and the shine, or you just lean into the texture. I go for like a tobacco suede, which is probably my favourite. Suede shoes, flannel suits, just that sort of fuzzy nature, contrasting colours, but that lovely soft, rich material looks great for autumn. And then same for shirting. You can either go for a crisp sort of starched white shirt with it, so you get the contrast with the shirt and the suit, or you can lean into it and go for sort of softer shirts. In American styling, you would say an Oxford button-down and grey flannel was a very classic combination, or you could do things like herringbone, something a little bit softer, but also just classic poplins. You know, the classic Bengal poplins always look sharp. Here we've got a blue end-on-end, very classic English shirt with a grey flannel suit, perfect combination. You can't really go wrong really. And then same for ties. Now I always used to like, you don't really see shiny ties as much as you did, they're coming out of fashion. But I remember a few years ago when the satin tie was quite a look. People like Ralph Lauren would do like a grey flannel suit with a silver satin tie. Very elegant, particularly with a chalk stripe, very 1930s movie star. The moment we're going more sort of drier textures, and this has got this sort of in between grenadine, which is not so shiny, and going more matte. So if you really like the feeling of a grey flannel suit, you could go for sort of a cashmere tie or a madder silk. Madder silk and flannel, great companions. If you look at the Glen check here, I love that combination of madder silk pocket square with the flannel. Just very autumnal, very light absorbing, very sophisticated. This printed houndstooth tie looks great with flannel with a slight medium shine, but you could go either direction with this. You could either wear a satin for that sort of 1930s look, or go more subdued with perhaps like a cashmere woolen tie and go very matte. So from a styling point of view, they are so versatile. And as you can see here, flannel dresses down beautifully. I've swapped out the shirts and ties for more casual items. On my left here, I've swapped out the tie for a lighter grey cashmere roll neck. It just looks so effortless with the flannel suit. Soft, very autumnal. If you wanted to make this into more of a jacket look, you can maybe put a bit of pattern into the trousers. Maybe I'd stick to the flannels, maybe a houndstooth check pair of trousers, and then the suede shoes. I think you should have some like brown suede chucker boots, picking out the tan in the pocket square, really lovely, smart, casual look. And then here, my absolute favourite shirt, the ubiquitous chambray dress shirt with the open neck with my Prince of Wales check. Again, you could wear that as a suit with some loafers, or use this as a sports jacket, maybe some sort of navy chino type trousers. Well, I hope you enjoyed that deep dive. Let us know in the comments whether you prefer flannel dressed up or dressed down, and don't forget to subscribe.